The Honourable Dr Brian Walker.
Thank you, Chair. I first of all want to thank the members who spoke in my absence last session. I was taken down with COVID, and I do appreciate the help. Honourable Shelley Payne, thank you for that as well. The first thing I really wanted to say about this report, and I'm immensely proud to have actually been part of this select committee, immensely proud, and also of the members of the committee, the highest standards of behaviour were required. For a number of reasons, but I think mainly because we're talking about a topic which is very sensitive. The idea of cannabis being something that you would laugh at or disregard or criticise in some way as being an illicit drug, and or the use of the medicinal uses can often be a cover, if you like, for using cannabis the wrong way. And so we had on board members who had never actually experienced cannabis before and were then required to deal with a difficult topic, the barriers that we're talking about, the medicinal use being of somewhat unknown content. And they were required to have open minds and receptive minds. And in the face of the potential attacks against the committee, the highest standards of behaviour were required. And I do thank the fellow members, Honourable Matt Swinburne, Deputy Chair, Jackie Jarvis, Honourable Jackie Jarvis, Honourable Lorna Harper, the behaviour exhibited in our long search was actually admirable. I'm so proud to be associated with you. And it's very important because had we not exhibited such standards, the reputation of this report could have come into disrepute, and that patently is not the case. The challenges we had to face in this were actually of having an open mind, of being able to research this in its deepest levels, and also a challenge for myself. As you can well imagine, I am a proponent of cannabis for medicinal use, and indeed I'm a proponent of decriminalising all drugs because of a variety of very sensible reasons. So I had to actually be sure that in this report I wasn't actually putting my own thoughts foremost, overriding, if you like, determining beyond the capability of the committee to actually come to open, clear, unbiased facts. And so removing the perception of bias from myself was actually one of my successes, I would claim. And I thank also the members for holding me back at times, so that what we have in this pretty excellent report is, I think, a clear, balanced, fair and very exciting highlight, at least of my political career, and something which we can say truly is groundbreaking. It goes perhaps in parallel with the report from the Honourable Fiona Patten in Victoria when she did a similar report on recreational cannabis. This was a learning curve. And there's a lot of information, stunning information as well, which we can go through in a moment. In fact, the learning is still going on. I myself, just today, was learning more about the uses of cannabis in treating ADHD and autism. Now, just digressing, I deal with this in my clinical career quite a lot, and I have a lot of success in managing autistic and patients and those with ADHD using cannabinoids. And so today, learning even more about the benefits and indeed the possible risks of using cannabis in such cases was brought home to me. And what I can say is mirror one of the recommendations from the report is that we actually do more research. More research is, of course, always needed. The science of cannabis is still being scratched on the surface. We had submissions, 81 submissions. That's quite a lot of submissions. I do regret that some of the venerable bodies didn't choose to send in a submission, and this I do regret. But that this is part of life. There were visits as well, United in Compassion, and may I please make very clear the immense good work that Lucy Haslam is doing in this body. She was the mother of a young man who was dying of bowel cancer in great pain, and she was the leading light in recommending in New South Wales that cannabis be prescribed as a medicinal substance for managing palliative pain. And that work is ongoing. We also visited the South West, and we mentioned a number of the areas which have received financial benefit from the government, and we saw exactly what they are doing. In fact, just the other week there, I was visiting again in Margaret River at the Margaret River Hemp Company, looking at one of their paddocks, with the hemp, which is used for building houses, and visiting a house and seeing a hemp house once again and admiring its absolute perfection, if you like, in nature. The stunning thing we discovered then is that a hemp field, were we able to banish the red tape and were we able to actually have full use of the plant, industrial hemp, a hectare of hemp, in comparison to a hectare of wheat, which is about $700, $800 a hectare, the hectare of hemp used completely would be about $23 million worth. And that was stunning information. As a committee, also, we had the great privilege of travelling to Europe and visiting the Czech Republic, Germany, and indeed also Israel. And what struck us in all of these areas, the Southwest as well as Europe and Israel, is the amount of scientific effort going into the development of cannabis as a medicine, as a social product which can very much improve outcomes compared to alcohol. But also, what struck me particularly as a medical practitioner is the intent of the Israelis to identify the individual cannabinoids and the individual terpenes, which then would be tested individually on diagnoses to then construct, if you like, a valid medically observed treatment plan or a treatment approach where we can use the components of a healing herb to manage quite major diseases. In fact, one of the things that we got from, I think it was Dr. Yuval Landknecht, in charge of the medical cannabis movement at the government level in Israel, was that they're using this cannabis to treat ovarian cancer. And I thought, if this is just one part of the approach we've got, what a wonderful tool we have got for use in the future. And there's many other uses we could, I think, find as well. But I found that very, very interesting. Now, much, I said, had been admitted, those who didn't contribute before, but also some of the admissions did mirror part of the problems. I was surprised, maybe I shouldn't be surprised, but one of the contributions we got was from the CCI, which was remarkable in its inability to actually provide any solid information beyond bias. The concept that there are major issues regarding the fly-in, fly-out workers and their safety at work using medicinal cannabis was roundly rebuffed by prejudice and ignorance. And that continues to this day. As I understand, Rio Tinto Zinc has just now made it clear in their new alcohol and other drugs handbook that they will not tolerate even medical cannabis, even if it greatly improves the outcome of the patient, even if it improves their ability to work without impairment. So the bias there is shining through. And that was one of the things that our committee identified as one of the barriers, if you like, to use of medical cannabis. So there's a number of barriers that we did see there, the closed mind and the anti-scientific approach to what are we dealing with, the assumption that cannabis can only be used as a drug. It has to be thoroughly banished. And the committee, I think, did an excellent job in making that very, very clear. Now, we go on and discussed what is cannabis as a plant. And something with over 100 cannabinoids and terpenes as well, the potential from the ability to derive revenue of, again, huge amounts of revenue which are possibly derived from simply growing a plant, whether for medicinal uses or industrial uses, was demonstrated. In fact, just the other day that I was talking with someone who came to me for medical cannabis, who has a company which creates and I'm not going to give any names for this because it is sensitive for the ADF, but creating a housing for electrical motors, which is bullet and bomb proof. Very useful for the ADF. And that housing is made of a combination of hemp and Kevlar and carbon. And so what we're seeing here is the innovative use of a plant which could greatly enhance the ability of our armed forces to be protected in areas of great danger. And that's one of over 20,000 potential uses for the plant. And what disturbs me, I think, is the understanding that because of our ongoing prejudices, we're still not seeing the investment in the area that would give so much benefit to our society. And I'm deeply hopeful that our current Agriculture Minister, who was a member of that committee, would bear this in mind when it comes to further investment in the area of hemp, especially in the southwest. And indeed,
Members, the question is the report being noted. The Honourable Dr Brian Walker.
thank you, Chair. And indeed, going on from this, the concept that we could, with hemp as an industrial hemp product, move into our partners in Asia and indeed further afield with great benefit to our economy, perhaps even overtaking the economy of our iron ore exports, which would reflect back on our recent debate we've had in this House today. Now, I found very interesting in part of our report that according to international law, cannabis is still a prohibited narcotic. Now, the reason I am interested in this is because narcotic is actually a medical definition, and cannabis absolutely fails in every respect to merit the definition of a narcotic. And yet, our laws are predicated upon the assumption that cannabis is a narcotic. And from that derive the laws which are making it so difficult to access the use of this plant, either socially or medically, and that we are therefore inhibiting our ability to derive serious profits from industrial hemp. Now, this concept here, as a politician, are we able then to define medically what something is, even if that definition is a false definition? Let's call it a lie. Because now, on that based lie, we now have international laws which are severely hampering the potential for countries to develop their own economies. And this is something that we as a committee, we didn't go into this at all, but the evidence speaks for itself, reading the report and the definitions and the descriptions we have given. And this, I think, is another part of our groundbreaking report. So what we ought to point out that lies have no place in law. Now, moving on from that, it was fascinating for me to discover that the Department of Health here has described a cannabis leaf as a Schedule 9 drug. Now, a Schedule 9 drug is a drug for which no medical use can be found. Now, this leaf, which has no measure of any higher function effect, has purely food properties. 4 leaves made into a green smoothie, for example, would make an excellent treatment for COVID, would actually be an excellent treatment for enhancing people's wellness on a regular basis, and certainly far tastier than kale in your green smoothie. That was described as an S9, a Schedule 9 drug. And due, I think, to an abundance of caution on the part of people who had believed or bought into the concept that cannabis is an illicit, dangerous drug, I can see where they're coming from, but it had no basis in science whatsoever. Which led us on to the concept that the Misuse of Drugs Act, we really ought to follow the advice of Honourable Wayne Martin after 5 years, maybe take some action in revisiting the Misuse of Drugs Act, as has been promised, because people are suffering. And I do hope our report goes some way to helping people to suffer less, that we can ease their burden. Another main area here, and you're expecting this, I'm sure, the THC and driving laws. I have with the presentation of our report, the government gave its response, and I'm very thankful for that. Most of the recommendations we made have been agreed in principle, but for the THC and driving, the recommendation we made was that this actually be revisited, that the laws be rewritten. And a working group has been formed, and I do thank the government very much for this promise that there will be a good scientific look at the concept of THC and driving. And I note that in today's paper that there is actually a concept here of the world first programme for assessing driving impairment. And this is a fantastic idea, not just for the ability to test the safety of roads, but also for the ability to test how safe are drivers on the road, not just with cannabis, but with other drugs and indeed also sleep impairment. And so, again, if this is groundbreaking, I think WA is leading the way in this. I do hope this gets carried on into the THC driving working group. I have high hopes for that. And we might, perchance, follow on in the footsteps of Germany, the country we visited back in November 2022, and with whom I was very much in love, and that the laws, the carefully crafted laws, are now coming into place, which allow us to develop a medical cannabis and indeed a recreational cannabis society where safety of all is concerned, especially as the Honourable Burkhard Blinert said in a discussion I had with him in Germany, we are protecting the health of the miners. And this is, I'm not talking about the coal miners, I'm talking about the children. And that makes eminent sense for me. In a few minutes, I could go on to industrial hemp, and we need to go on to industrial hemp because this is where the vast majority of the income can be derived by our government. Medical cannabis is actually quite a small part of the potential benefits to our society, the potential benefits to our government. Now, the wellness for people is, on the one hand, is very important because they will begin to contribute better to society, better to the GDP. But industrial hemp has a multitude of uses. The current ability to use every part of the industrial hemp plant is severely curtailed by our fear of THC. Now, as we all know, THC has caused not one single death. Not one single death. So as a dangerous drug, you have to say it's nowhere near a problem. People have argued that if we give industrial hemp to animals to eat, they will have THC and we shouldn't eat that meat because then we will get high. A question I posed in Parliament some months ago was how many whole cows do we have to eat to get one high? And I'm not quite sure, I haven't counted it, but at 3 cows to be ingested in one sitting to get one high, I think is putting the point very clearly that the fear of feeding industrial hemp to animals is grossly oversauced. We ought to take a clearer look at this, especially in view of the vast benefits we as a society can gain from using a material, a plant, which has so many uses, ranging from pet bedding up to making materials which could be sent into space as part of our high-end scientific development. Now, the last part, the Honourable Shelley Pay mentioned hemp as a food. Again, I couldn't encourage this more. I mentioned earlier the concept of using 4 cannabis leaves as part of a regular green smoothie. Now, when I was visiting this hemp paddock, I did sample some of the leaves just to see how fresh are they, how very helpful they are. And the note, of course, that these leaves contain the acid form of the cannabinoids. They haven't been heated. They're very simply put into your juicer, and you then have that as part of your regular healthy diet. The omega-3, 6 and 9 oils are there. It's a healthy supplement which can be used by everyone I know to their own benefit. And indeed, the evidence is such that this could be a treatment, A, for preventing COVID, B, for treating COVID, or indeed, I don't know yet, but we're looking at this, could this be a treatment for long COVID? How many thousands or millions of dollars could be saved as a society if we used a health food rather than expensive drugs with little effect? Now, one area we looked at in our committee, of course, was the issue of the regulations and the red tape. And we saw an abundance of red tape, which is making it so difficult for people to actually access this, both as a medicine and as an industrial hemp product. And so this is one area, I think, where we as a government, you as a government, are able to take an active part in this process by regulating honestly and openly, without fear of THC, and reducing the regulatory burden, reducing the burden of red tape, and allowing a potential industry, an innovative industry, to then arise and provide a forward-thinking approach to using a natural material which can grow abundantly and which would have the other added benefits of transforming our topsoil from a few centimetres to 1.5 metres, of changing the quality of the topsoil with the microbiome there, which is then suitable for using in all areas, something which would, from the farming point of view, allow the greater yields of wheat and canola and lupins, which would allow a transformation, if you like, of the water supply to our rivers and lakes, and then, of course, with an effect on the microclimate. To say nothing of the potential for the industrial woods that we could create. Rather than actually chopping down the trees, we could then maybe use this as a substitute for making very high quality wood materials, which have the added benefit of having a 3 or 4 times a year harvest and benefiting from the carbon capture the price of which would actually substantially add to the benefits to our state from the financial bottom line. And so,
members, consideration of this report is postponed, and we now move to report 2.